You might be wondering, why should I care about user experience? Even though it's part of Advyzon's day-to-day, we're always thinking about how you experience our product. I think we can see from Matthew's speech as well as from our expert panelists here today that learning across industries is so important, and bringing that into what we do as advisors and staff. So consider a couple of facts. I know Matt just said, you're not going to remember the facts. You're going to remember how you feel. But when your clients are logging on to your website, to their client portal, 75% of consumers are judging the credibility of that site in under 4 seconds. And if they have a bad user experience, they don't really want to go back to it. User experience is also in all of our lives, in everything that we do. So from Amazon orders, to the apps on your phone, to the websites that you visit, like Advyzon. We're going to talk about what key elements need to be present in order to have a great user experience, what it means to have a bad, and how to overcome some of those hurdles. So I know that we already introduced our panelists for today. I'm going to be interviewing our panelists. If we have time at the end, we will also ask all of you for your great questions, so think about those as we're going through ours. And then after ours is the great part of the day, the break, and heading into your breakout sessions. So yes, please help me welcome Marc Hans from HubSpot, as well as intellectual thought leader and FinTech legend, I want that title, Tony Stich. So I'm going to start with Marc. I'm going to give a little bit of background on our panelists just so you know a little bit more about them and the expertise that they bring to the stage here today. So Marc here is a multifaceted individual with a diverse background spanning from education and nonprofit work to corporate innovation and sales and marketing leadership. As a human-centered designer, we'll learn more about what that means, he focuses on building empathy for end users, to creating content as experiences, which we just learned about. Marc is currently creating content as a senior professor at HubSpot Academy, while balancing the joys and challenges of fatherhood with 3 children. Based in Chicago, Marc is passionate about donuts, coffee, skateboarding, and engaging discussions on topics like the Grateful Dead, innovation, and parenthood.
Donuts.
I'm regretting writing that bio, right?
And Tony here is a renowned figure in the FinTech realm with publications in prestigious outlets such as the Journal of Financial Planning, wealthmanagement.com, and Investopedia. He's also been featured on major platforms including Reuters, FinTech TV, and Investment News, earning recognition for his insightful perspectives, data-driven analysis, and a touch of humor that he brings to the rapidly evolving financial industry, as well as these great shoes.
Which we'll talk about today.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we can just jump in right here. Marc, we're going to start with you just because Marc is coming from the non-FinTech side, whereas Tony is coming from the FinTech perspective. So we have a little bit of both here. So let's just start with an easy one. What does user experience mean to you?
Thank you, Advyzon. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I know it's hard to get away from families and whatnot, so we appreciate you all being here. User experience is your users' experience with anything that you do. Thank you for coming. I kind of think about user experience in like two ways. I'm going to give it to you in like the PowerPoint way and then like the Chicago way. So the PowerPoint way is in 3 bullet points. User experience at the highest level, like the 30,000-foot view looking down, is everything your clients, your prospects, your leads, your customers, everything that happens between you and them from the minute they realize you exist in the world until one of you dies. That is user experience. Every email, every conversation at the golf club, every intro, it's everything. At the middle level, like 15,000 feet looking down, user experience is how they engage with you and your services. The meetings, the calls, the emails, whatever the work is. And at the very like ground level, the user experience, we tend to think about the digital experience. What are they doing? What are they interacting with when they log into a portal, when they receive an email? So again, high level, everything you ever do with them from the minute they know you're alive until one of you leaves the earth, sorry. And then at the very bottom level, how they're interacting with you digitally. The other side of it, the kind of Chicago side, I'm a Chicagoan, I know a lot of you are Chicagoans, Chicago-style hot dog. It's the greatest thing in the world. Chicago-style hot dog is well curated. It's a steamed poppy seed bun. If it's not a poppy seed bun, run out of that place, don't come back. But you know, you got mustard, relish, onions. It's a yellow sweet onion. If it's red onions, boogie out of there. Red tomatoes, pickle slice, celery salt, and some sport peppers. That is your user experience. And every ingredient there is something different that you create. So maybe the tomatoes are your portal, and maybe the pickle is, you know, an email that gets sent out, and maybe the celery salt on top is a little gift basket you send out like holiday times. All of those things matter, and one little bad tomato can ruin an entire hot dog. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I'm so hungry.
I know, I'm starving now. Tony, do you?
Yeah, so what is user experience? I have a confession to make first. I have about 25 pairs of purple tennis shoes, 6 of which are one of a kind. One of a kind. That's what a good user experience is. So Nike has developed a website called Nike by You, right? You can go to the website today, right now, in fact, after this presentation, and you actually customize a series of tennis shoes specifically to your liking. It's fascinating. Every part about the shoe, the vamp, the sole, the tongue, these shoes were developed, I made them, I don't know, 5-6 years ago now. These shoes are actually, this is the second time I've ever worn them. They're LeBrons. You cannot make these anymore, and in fact, these are one of a kind. These are from the brand Navaplan. I used to be the COO of a company called Navaplan, and I customized and built these shoes. That's what a good user experience is. Not just the ability to make these shoes and personalize them, but the fact that I have 5 other one-of-a-kind shoes. Good user experience brings people back. It draws them back for more. I have now 6 custom pairs of shoes from Nike. Don't tell my wife, okay? And I'll keep coming back for more for that very reason. Now, technically speaking, the user experience is, to Marc's point, right? How a user navigates through a series of tasks, right? Digitally speaking, that would be button clicking, advancing through tabs, etc. Not to be confused with user interface, what they're looking at. It's the actual workflow, okay? But to Marc's point, I think it's very important for us as advisors to understand that the user experience is not just the digital experience that your prospects or your clients are engaging with. It's in fact the entire advice delivery process. From everything you do to enhance that experience, everything you do to make them want to come back for more. How are you improving that experience every time you interact with a client, a prospect, deliver advice, or encourage them to go to the digital experience on the client portal for Advyzon, for instance. So that's the way I look at user experience. It's actually moving someone to do something again and repeat over and over.
Great. And so I know you touched a little bit on how to create or what leads to a positive user experience, personalization, making people want to come back. But are there any other elements that need to be present in order to have that positive user experience?
So As a designer, we always try to think with the end in mind, right? You ask that question, maybe you ask this question like, what does success look like? And really define it. Sometimes we think about things subjectively, right? Success is a subjective thing, but it can be objectively measured. And you can think about this when you think about like user experience. And so you need to think about what is the definition of what a successful user experience looks like for you and for your clients. And use words to define it, meaning like, is it simple? Is it interactive? Is it personalized? Is it collaborative? Those things are really important. So as you start to design these things, you know, are you hitting that North Star? But before you can even think about what you're like, we do this activity, it's called user experience goals. We sit at a whiteboard with all these Post-it notes. They have a bunch of different words on them. Words like simple, collaborative, interactive, stuff like that. And then we start to talk about like, who are we designing for? And that's a hard question to ask. We spend about 80 time researching users, talking to them, walking with them, building empathy for them. Because when we first ask them, like, why are you coming to the portal? What are you trying to get out of it? That first answer is a throwaway. People will always tell you what they think they should say and what you want to hear. So this thing is like, when you think about the goals of that user experience, it's really not what your goals are, it's what are their goals? What are your users' goals for that digital experience? There's a thing we do, it's called the 5 Whys. It's made famous by a design firm called IDEO. If you're a note taker, this is a good one. The 5 Whys, okay? 5 Whys is if you were to ask somebody, you know, why are you here today? Why are we working together? They might tell you, I want to seek to achieve financial freedom for my family and generations to come. Great. Next step, ask them why again. Why is that important to you? Why does that matter? You're going to get another answer there. And you say, oh, you know, maybe things were a little tougher for me growing up, and I don't want my kids to have that experience. All right, now we're getting somewhere, right? You ask them why again. Well, why did that happen? Tell me about that. By the time you ask why 5 times, you are zeroed in on the core empathy of your user. You know really why they're there, and it's usually not that first answer. So when you build empathy for users, then you can decide what are the goals of that user experience so I can design for them, right? We say don't fall in love with your idea, fall in love with the people whose problems you're trying to solve. And I think that's an important way to think about how to design that experience is figure out who you're building for, what is their pain, challenge, desires, and design around that, not always what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I mean, I've been in this industry for a long time. I just want to time out real quick.
Yeah.
5 Whys, that's something that every advisor should apply to their practice tomorrow, because what a great way to develop a financial plan than understanding those 5 Whys. Okay, back to the conversation. So on the UX side of things, I think, yeah, so it's funny, when we built the client portal for Naviplan, this was probably about 6-7 years ago now, and we looked at all the studies and all the statistics around client portal penetration rates, and it's really like 3%. People are coming like very infrequently. We needed to dig into why and understand why. And what we found from users in all of our studies was that client portals, for the most part, were really just a kind of a pane of glass, right? They were a point-in-time visualization of someone's financial life without the true ability to interact, right? So these users are saying, well, I have nothing to do except for look at it, right? And I kind of have a general sense of where I'm at anyways, so what we did was we drilled into that to understand how can we make it interactive and make them feel empowered, okay, to be able to take action on their plan, right? There's really 3 types of users in the financial advisor space. There's the do-it-yourself group, right? We all know who those are, right? They're investing on Betterment or on Robinhood, whatever that is, right? On the other side, there's your delegators, right? These are individuals that delegate to you to do a task for them. Okay, they say, I want you to create a financial plan, I want you to invest in these 5 things, whatever that is, they delegate. The large tranche in the middle, about 80% of the investing public, is someone called, they're collaborators, right? They are individuals that seek out, they're called validators, they seek out validation from you. So when they want to purchase a boat, invest in college for their children, whatever that is, they seek out the validating argument from you to say, yes, that's what you should be doing. So when we built this portal, we built it for validators. We built it for them to be able to perform a task and then to seek out the advice or validation from the advisor, and then vice versa. Before an advisor would perform an action, they would also seek out that validation by way of the client portal with their investors. So the way I look at it is making sure that digital experience is interactive, simple, and accessible. But I'll end with this. The low penetration rates on client portals are your fault as well. Are you driving them back there? Is your user experience encouraging them to engage at the digital level, right? Are you emailing them? Are you reminding them to check their portal or to add something to the document vault or to do X, Y, or Z? How is your user experience encouraging those behaviors? Because the moment that happens, they're going to buy more pairs of Nikes. Okay, they will be your client for life because you've created an experience that draws them back daily, weekly, monthly, what have you, and they will not leave you as a client.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about client portal here in just a little bit, but great point. So simplicity, accessibility, interactive, making it memorable, invoking a feeling like we heard with storytelling. I have one of my own. It's my only story that I'll tell. So I have a pet, and they're on very special diet food. I'm talking like $75 every other week. It's a lot. And we were doing fine, and all of a sudden, all the cans started coming completely damaged. Half of them were open and unusable. So I'm just pouring money down the drain. And so I went on their website, trying to get some support there. They did have an online conversational chat feature, so I used that first, submitted my order number, here's what's wrong, I want to be either compensated or send new cans that are not busted. And so back and forth with the chat bot ended in, you need to call to talk to someone in person. Also not a problem, realize this is kind of a unique circumstance. So I get on the phone and I'm going through all their prompts. Now I'm starting to feel a little bit frustrated where I didn't necessarily go into it with that in mind. And at the end, the very last thing that it was all automated, the very last thing it said was, use our chatbot. So I got nowhere, and honestly, they lost my business because of that. So user experience is not only impactful on the positive side, but we also, I think, need to pay attention to what it means to have a negative user experience. What are some of the hurdles towards achieving a positive user experience, and some of the strategies that maybe we can use to overcome those hurdles?
Oh, totally. As you can tell, we look like we're pitching like a sitcom. We're like kind of like the odd couple up here, right? Like he's just dipped. He looks so fancy. My mom would be like, Mark, you look like a schlub. I'm sorry, but I'm trying to do my best for you. But the user experience, one thing that is so important in creating a great user experience and also avoiding a poor user experience is remember, it's not about you. It's about them. Right? And so one thing that comes up a lot, maybe in your experience, your tale about, the pet food is, number one, use common language. Speak to the common denominator, okay? You throw around some words, I don't know what they are already, some things you've said, right? But if you said it in a different way, I'm like, oh, cool, I know it. It disarms me. When we use language that might be industry specific and maybe everyone in this room knows, but somebody new to your, kind of client portfolio, they might not know what it means. It kind of like arms them. They feel like an outsider. We want to enable people. We want to include, not exclude users. So number one thing to that you can think about to avoid a bad user experience, language is really important. Number two, we use this term, it's called the happy path, right? Sounds great, it's the happy path. So the happy path is, what would things look like if it just worked? Like it's just the easiest, no friction, click here, this happens, done, right? So think about there's definitely things that'll be getting in your way. There's hindrances. We know compliance is a big issue. Once you know where those guardrails are, that's your time to innovate. I always say constraints are an accelerant of innovation. When you constrain time, money, resources, that's where we know where we can start to play. So again, number one would be use common language. Number two is about removing the hurdles, right? Think about all the steps people have to do to achieve a task and a successful task. Only strive for maybe 3 steps. It's like the rule of 3 clicks. Like if you have to log into something or you gotta like do something or somebody asks you to do something, you lose me after 3 clicks or I gotta go here and I gotta do this. So try to maintain that happy path. And I think if you use that as your North Star, one, you're putting yourself in the user's shoes, which is essential, and you're designing for ease of use. People like ease of use. The other thing real quick I think it's important is you talk to a lot of people. And as you said, they're very different user personas, right? People want self-service. People want you to hold my hand. It's important to know who you're designing for and then try to make sure that you are delivering to them that experience that they want. Sometimes people don't want a great user experience. They want us to get out of their way. We might be able to design for that to get a successful outcome.
Yeah.
I think the thing about negative experiences that are so important to understand is like, we all have those stories. Like we all have those stories. And so if you provide a poor negative user experience, that becomes a story, right? And that's not the story you want your prospects to hear, right? So it's a matter of, I think you're absolutely correct, taking the language down a notch. I'm going to teach him about Monte Carlo simulations later and stated risk preferences, all that fun stuff. So he'll catch up to us. But it is that accessibility level. It's making sure it's accessible, right? But I think at the end of the day, we have to understand, to your point originally, Eve, about the digital frustrations we might have. Let's not hide behind technology. Let's not hide behind those experiences to defer our customers, right? I think the idea here is to be proactive in that experience, right? Oftentimes we find out that individuals will call their advisor if something happens in the market. Typically that's what happens, right? You get a lot of phone calls, right? How is your digital user experience preventing that from happening? How are you staying on top of communications, if it's by way of email or phone call, to assuage someone's concerns, right? Leveraging the powerful CRM and Advyzon, for instance, understand someone's kind of propensity to talk with you about certain topics. Understanding those clients at that level, so you can be communicating via digital email for some, phone calls for others. So it's right, being proactive about that user experience, because again, back to the original point, user experience is not just digital. It is the entire process with which your clients and prospects are interacting with you.
Yeah, and just to kind of bring it back a little bit to the Advyzon experience, we definitely love hearing from all of you. I know that I work on the education and training side, if you can't tell by this huge picture of me. It's embarrassing behind me. But I'm constantly thinking about this. Is this too many clicks? And then I'm going back to our developers saying, how can we simplify this? But a lot of that feedback comes from you. And when I was working on our service team, I was always asking questions. Because the why factor, right? Just keep asking why. Keep trying to get to those underlying drivers of the user experience. And spending that time working on your business, especially if you're newer to Advyzon, we do offer a client portal. It is seen a lot of great new additions very recently, as well as it's one of our top priorities going into our version 3. So we have 2 older versions. We're currently in version 2, going on to version 3, and so there'll be a lot more kind of bells and whistles for you to play around with there. But spending a little bit of time on creating your brand, right? Because that is part of how your clients are experiencing you when they're logging on to see their financial picture and interacting with that. And so we want to have that be a seamless process. If you want to match it up to your reporting, you can. If you want to give them different information outside of their reporting, you can. So I think that that's just good to kind of keep in mind that one of those hurdles is the amount of time that you need to dedicate towards creating that user experience for your clients, because it is important. One of the facts that I missed on the intro was for every $1 that is invested in user experience, the expected ROI on that is 10 to 100 times. So thought that was pretty impactful. Okay, so let's change things up a little bit. I'm going to actually start with Tony on this next question. So putting yourself in the shoes of our advisors, what aspects of their clients' user experience might they be overlooking?
So I think that's a fantastic question, and actually, thank you for that segue, because last night I was at the lobby bar with a few industry folks, and we were just chatting, and a couple advisors approached us, Brad and Samantha from Ohio. I know they're here somewhere, and they actually had, it was me, Joel Bruckenstein, John O'Connell, and Shannon Rozick. So they had 4 people, and they got about $5,000 worth of free consulting work that night. And it was actually around integrations and data, right? And bidirectional data feeds between the different applications, and the importance of having relevant data for different parts of the application. Now, with the financial plan, not necessarily, right? Because planning is typically episodic, quarterly or biannual, whatever. But having that real-time data feed, right? And making sure that the clients are getting access to real-time data. And so advisors need to understand the importance of that too. You're part of this equation. You're part of this process to make sure that interactivity, those connections are working, right? And you're getting that data to them correctly. Secondly, I think the other thing is you need to understand how the client portal works better than your end investor, okay? You need to go through that process yourself. We did a study, I used to work in banking, and we did a study where Rocket Mortgage was coming out, and Rocket Mortgage was eating our lunch, right? And we were getting really worried about it, but then all of a sudden it kind of tapered off. And what we found is Rocket Mortgage created curiosity by their prospects. But what happened was we found is that people still wanted to trust another individual making such a large or sizable purchase as in a home or a second home, right? We all agree with that. But what we found was really fascinating is that someone would come into our branch to apply for a first mortgage, and they would ask a series of questions, right? And if the mortgage broker didn't have those answers, that conversation was over. They would not do business with you. We were in the digital age of information where people could research countless hours. In fact, we found out that they invested 8 hours of research using platforms like Rocket Mortgage to understand the ins and outs of the various forms of liens, right? 30-year, 15-year, ARM, 7, 5, all that nonsense, right? Especially at the precipice of 2007. And so what we found is if someone came into the office and asked a question the broker couldn't answer, we lost that business. So we then had to become the best and the most intelligent in those conversations. And you must be too when it comes to the client portal or any other investment matter for that, right? So I think it comes down to making sure the advisors have good, relevant data feeding into the process on a daily basis, so making sure those integrations are well connected, but also being able to navigate those digital experiences together so that you are the subject matter expert and you don't say, I'll call the developer, shrugging your shoulders. That's a bad experience. It's being able to navigate that with them.
Yeah. I think one thing I hear you saying is become that trusted advisor in all aspects of their interaction with you, right? We talk about the customer journey. How does somebody become aware that you are alive and that they have a challenge that you can help them prepare for and or solve? And when you become that trusted advisor in all aspects, you become, Seth Godin, great marketer, talks about being a wandering generalist versus a meaningful specific. find out what specificity folks need out of you, and you just be the best expert on that. I think another thing for your question is, what might we be overlooking when we think about the portal experience? You talked about data. You got to have good data, and I think sometimes that might be out of maybe our hands, right? I think what's really important is to ask your clients what their experience is with the portal. Ask them, when are they checking it? Why are they checking it? Do they do it over coffee in the morning? Do they have a set time? Knowing how they experience it and asking them for what's working and what's not working will, again, if you put that 20% of the time aside in the beginning and make it a good practice to not just check in on their portfolio, on their investments, and on the work that you're doing, what you're doing, ask them how are you doing at what you're doing for them, right? I had a great mentor said, sometimes it's not what you do, it's how you do it, right? So they might want great returns. Everybody wants great returns. But if it's a bumpy path to get there, you want to create that great user experience. So I would say maybe one thing folks might be overlooking is making specific time to talk to your clients about their experience. When I started dating, this guy told me this line. He goes, the line is, hey, enough about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? So ask them, what do they think about you and the experience of working with you? Because then you know where you can start making little incremental improvements to start making a better user experience. I think one thing I've learned about the industry is it's a flywheel. You have happy customers, they're bringing more happy customers to you. It's that relationship that's going. And if you've got some kind of holes in your fence, some kinks in your armor, bad user experience, less likely people are going to start funneling into you. So again, think about learning about their experience with your work and finding out how you can make those little incremental changes to make it better for them.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely checking in with them, and just like we're checking in with you, hopefully you've had a chance to talk with some of the Advyzon employees. If you haven't, please find me sometime during this conference. I would love to chat with you. I'm always interested in knowing, about your particular user experience, or even what your clients are experiencing. So that's great. Always checking in and asking those good questions.
Can I say one more thing real quick?
No, absolutely not.
Thank you. Okay, feedback, input, yeah. Ask for input, not feedback. So the difference between input and feedback is like, I always say, like, don't make pot roast for a vegetarian, right? Like, hey, I made this thing for you. Do you like it? Like, no, I don't eat meat. But if I ask for input, hey, do you have any dietary restrictions? What kind of meal you hoping for? Is this a 5-course sit-down meal, or is it like In-N-Out Burger? What are we doing here? And then when you're in the kitchen, you're making the sauce, let them taste it. Those are inputs. If you ask for inputs throughout your process of designing whatever you're designing, by the time you plate that meal and you deliver it to that person, it's exactly what they wanted. Versus, I hope they like it, what's your feedback? So input versus feedback is a really great way to kind of absolve you of some poor user experience.
Yeah. And so the client portal plays a huge role in shaping a client's experience. So how can advisors consistently engage clients? Because this is a financial portal, right? It's not their fun Facebook where they're sitting there with all their friends. So how do they make that engaging and make people want to come back to their financial client portal?
All right, quick thing. Again, if you're a note taker, this is a good one. It's called the 7-star experience. So Matthew had mentioned, right, going to a hotel. What's that 5-star experience look like, Well, we say map out what does the 7-star experience look like? What would be the craziest hotel experience ever? Like maybe it's somebody is sitting next to you on the plane as a representative from the hotel. They're getting your bag for you. When you get to, you don't even have to check in. You get to your room, your favorite snacks are there. The golf channel's on, if you're into golf, whatever. But this is like the 7-star experience. They send a text message or a note to your family when you've arrived safely. That's 7-star experience. Now, we know we're not going to do that, but when you start by defining what does the 7-star experience look like, then you have a good base to start creating the 6, the 5, the 4, the 3, and what have you. And so I think about getting folks into the portal. What does that experience look like? Again, ask them what they want. try to design the greatest experience for them, then figure out what is, we always say the definition of innovation is a concentric circle, a Venn diagram of what's desirable, what's feasible, and what's viable, right? So what do people desire? Do they want it? What is feasible? Can you make it happen with the stuff that you have around? And is it viable? Can it live in the ecosystem you're designing it for? And so when you ask people what they want, you figure out their desires. You kind of talk to the team like, hey, what can we actually make? Will it be sustainable? That's the core of innovation. And I think that if you can design around that kind of experience, I think you're going to have greater penetration into the portal because you're designing that experience for them.
Show of hands of who flew Delta Airlines to this conference. Show of hands. So not as many as I thought. I'm a Delta enthusiast. So Ed Bastian is their CEO. Ed, famous, I mean, he's fairly prolific now as the CEO of one of the most successful airlines to ever grace this earth. But what I found really fascinating about Ed is he said, we are not an airline company. We are a technology provider. We provide digital experiences. And at first, you're like, no, you have a bunch of jets and you fly people around the country. But then you begin to realize that he has modernized the way with which we interact with Delta. Okay, I can now sit here right from the stage and change my seat or move my flight tomorrow. I can, at any given time, communicate with them by way of the app. What's even more fascinating is now, when you sit down in my plane seat, there's curated experiences on the screen for me. Hello, Tony. What would you like to watch today? And I also get the 7-star notes from the flight attendant saying, thank you for your platinum status. Nice to see you, Tony. I see the flight attendants more than my kids, so you don't want my status level. Now, I was famously quoted one time as saying, advisors aren't technologists. You did not sign up to be technologists, right? You signed up to provide better financial outcomes for your investors, for your clients, who are now your friends, right? But buckle up. You have to become technologists. That is where we're moving. That is where the puck is going. We cannot dig down and say, no, I'm going to be a financial advisor, run Monte Carlo simulations, and not worry about digital experiences. That's not the case. So to Marc's point, the client portal must be core. Now, of course, you cannot control what the portal does for the most part. You can control some of it through configurations and branding, of course, but for the most part, that is Advyzon's control. So it's how do you create the user experience around that to drive adoption, to drive penetration, to drive uses, right? And that's through those digital experiences, becoming a technologist, looking outside the industry to companies like Delta to see how they've modernized the experience of flying. How can you modernize your advice delivery process, leveraging the Advyzon Client Portal or other solutions, technologically speaking, that enhances the advice experience? I'll tell you this, and I'm not making this up. If I see a client portal that's less than I expect from a digital experience, I will not use you. End of sentence. I will not use you. I've made a decision that technology must be so delightful and so modern that if it's not that case, I'm going to find something better. Because there's this, it's a cognitive dissonance. It's saying in your brain, if they are not modern digitally, how can they provide modern advice? How can they provide advice on digital assets, alts, all the new stuff that's happening if you have an antiquated digital experience? It's a dissonance and it will not work. So we must embrace the moniker of technologists and make sure we're driving uses to that client portal. We're driving adoption to the client portal through your entire user experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really, as a quick follow-up, it's important too, you're 100% right. We're not stopping the wave of technology, right? AI, heard of it? It's here. These things are coming at us faster. The rate of acceleration and innovation is tenfold what it used to be. Don't be scared. Just be proactive. And so a little nugget here, just set aside time on your calendar, 20 minutes on a Friday, to just start playing around. Use that time to start reading about AI. Use that time to start thinking about where can I move the needle a little bit? I forget who said it, but it's like, if you have a business and you're not setting up time to put yourself out of business, somebody else is. So if you're not taking time to be dedicated to getting involved with the technology, learning it better so you can advise your clients on that and start to be ahead of the curve, again, this is like 10 minutes on the treadmill every morning. It's going to start having compounding effects on your work and on your digital experience.
No, it's a great point. And I just want to, so fear, oftentimes I'm on stage talking about marketing, right? And advisors are typically fearful of marketing because they're fearful of putting themselves out there. We need to shed that, right? And I think there's a presentation coming up shortly about getting 24 hours in your week back or whatever that is. Let's all go to that presentation and learn from that gentleman and then have those 24 hours stored to become technologists, right? But that's the reality. So it's like we need to not be fearful. We need to kind of embrace that change and understand that the industry is moving, the world around us is moving, and we must move with it.
Great. We have a few minutes for questions, a couple of quick questions from the audience. So we have some mic runners, or we should have some mic runners. So feel free to raise your hand. If not, I do have a couple of extra questions I can sneak in and some wrap up, but I apologize, the lights are a little in my eyes,
Slightly
so we
bright.
can't see if we have any audience questions. Oh, I see one over here, if somebody can run the mic.
Now, where's the mic runner? Faster.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
A lot of the information you gave is very helpful. My question is specific about the client portal feature.
Yeah.
And as a newer user and even more so a one-man shop, what tips, tricks do you have? You've given a few. Is it how maybe I could step into using the client portal? Maybe I always look at it as all or none. I've got to do it for all my clients at once or don't do it. You've given some good points, but is there anything you want to add to it for someone like me where I could just really start stepping into learning the portal and opening it up to my clients over time?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, we recently did a webinar on our current client portal, and so Dylan goes through all of the great points, I mean, from everything from A to Z. So where you need to kind of spend your time in settings and setting up your brand and your templates. So there are different options that are there for you. Some of them are integrations based. Some of them are obviously their investments and accounts. So just spending a few minutes thinking about that experience, right? What do you want them to log in and see? Some people want very, very simple, bare bones. Other people have engineering clients that want to be able to dig down as deep as they possibly can into every single number. So understanding your client base, but also that Advyzon can meet a lot of different needs. So if you have clients with different needs, you can create different templates and apply it to, one or two different templates across your client base. And so there's just a lot of like settings, branding, and then batch portal setup. So batch portal setup will allow you to do just that. If you have to set it up across all of your clients, you can do that very easily. And our service team would be more than happy to kind of walk you through that process, but also make sure to check out that webinar. Question over here.
Portal overload. Okay? We are all exposed to so many. We came to Advyzon a year ago, having trained our clients for years on eMoney's portal. To me, shifting them all over doesn't seem realistic. Talk to me about the roadmap for Advyzon to help practices like ours.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I came from using eMoney myself, so I know all about the eMoney portal, and it is wonderful. I think for Advyzon in specific, we just need to be in tune with the fact that integrations sometimes are king. And so you might have spent a really long time getting that set up and getting that out to your clients, and they had to develop a login. And so I think for us, it's innovating ways that we can connect clients between those portal systems without having to go out, find a new website, log back in, oh, okay, this is my mobile view, but this is my planning view, but this is my Advyzon view. You know, I think that's where we need to go, is just playing nice in the sandbox and being willing to meet a lot of different needs.
I think real quick on the point of the portal fatigue, yeah. So when I was at Naviplan, there was you had 2 custodian portals, you had Naviplan's portal, you had Portfolio Management's portal, and you're just like, oh my goodness, where do people go, right? And it is really hard, because what do? You're paying for one, you get 2 for free, so I think what we tried to do was encourage the advisors to have, oftentimes you have a page with just all your portal logins, which can be embarrassing sometimes, but what you do is just kind of explain very specifically, if you're seeking information on X, Y, or Z, visit this portal. If you're seeking information on your holdings, visit this, whatever that is, to kind of just educate them at that level, right? But I totally understand and it's very hard, right? I don't think there actually is an answer to this, because there is a custodial one, and there is a portfolio management one, and there can be a planning one as well. And there are firms out there that have tried creating one portal, rule them all, and it's just never worked. So good luck. No, but all jokes aside, it's really a matter of just providing information to say, this is the portal you should be looking at for this question or what have you. I mean, that's probably the best solution.
Yeah, I'll add to that, because I've seen similar instances in different industries. And again, where the constraint exists, where you can't move that mountain, we've found, if anybody's married, in a relationship, you got kids, whatever, 99% of the life's problems can be solved with communication. So I think communicating, educating in a very simple, honest, empathetic way to the end user, like you're saying, hey, this is how we do what we do. I think just education and communication up front can help kind of disarm folks, let them know it's not them or it's not you. It's just educating people on what the experience is going to be like.
Great, thank you guys. Okay, so
I think we have one more question. We have time for one more.
Oh, we do? Okay, sorry.
Hi, I'm a new user. Our data just converted. And this is piggybacking on this question here. One of the nice things about eMoney is that they do have a single sign-on into, say, Orion system. So clients can go in there, all their statements are loaded. And I guess the question I have is really more for Advyzon. Are you guys looking at the ability to single sign-on for the client, not the advisor, but the client level, to sign into the planning softwares or the various, I think you may have it on some things, and so the premise of my question may not be valid, but it doesn't seem like that's something that you're there yet.
We actually are. So for Money Guide Pro, we do offer a single sign-on so that clients that are entering the Advyzon portal could easily jump over into Money Guide Pro and view their financial plan. So it is out there, but I will say that we are exploring it with other financial platforms. So like eMoney, for example, we're actually finally in talks with them and should see a lot more features coming available very soon, actually. So keep your eye out for that. But yeah, I agree with you. So that single sign-on factor is huge, and that's kind of what I was talking about with like the integrations in the portal. Anybody else out there? Okay, I think we're good. All right, so we have a couple minutes left, real quick. 3 takeaways, bullet points. What should our advisors take away with them today?
Okay, top 3. You won't know unless you ask. So ask your people what they like, what they don't like, where you can make improvements for them. Ask questions, you will get answers, but also remember the 5 whys. So number 1 is ask questions, it builds empathy. Number 2, chunk your calendar. Put some time on your calendar to start thinking about these things, right? Work doesn't get better unless we work to make work better. So set time. If you're getting healthy, you go to the gym. If you want to become a different type of advisor and get involved with the tech and be ahead of the curve, you got to put time on your calendar. And I think the third thing is, I think Matthew said it, like when he was talking, just remember, we're all human. I said to you earlier, I was like, my thing in my head when I meet like, big dogs and whatnot, I say, everybody did a 7th grade science fair project. Right? Everybody you talk to, they sat in the cafeteria with their little trifle. Everybody, they're just human. So don't forget the human element of all of your experiences with the folks at Advyzon, with your clients. Just remember to be human.
Geez. Takeaways are always helpful because we want to make sure you're leaving with something good. You are the, number one, you are the epicenter of the user experience for your clients, not the technology. Okay, so everything you do should be mindful of that user experience to create that Nike by you experience or that Delta experience, right? How can you become the epicenter to drive those delightful experiences to create returning clients, right? Because that is the beautiful part of an advice relationship. Number two, you guys did not sign up for this, but you're all technologists at this point, okay? So start thinking and behaving like that. Like one, if you have to augment your practice with someone younger to help through that, that's something you can do as well. So number two, become a technologist. And number three, don't be scared. Don't be scared. We're all innovating. We're all evolving at the same point in time. I think taking those leaps, taking those risks, especially as it relates to technology, you'll be better for it. Yeah, that's it. So thanks all for your time. Really appreciate it. So much fun.
Yeah, thank you to both of our panelists and to all of you for paying attention and asking great questions.